If your eyes didn't work and you couldn't see what was going on between the ropes, which commentator would help you visualise the in-ring action the best? Well, I'm Mason in the Dark, and a few years ago my eyesight jobbed out harder than Bray Wyatt facing off against Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and now I'm here with the Wednesday Night Commentary Wars League table, ranking the best commentators from the war between NXT and AEW. Due to technical difficulties, I didn't manage to upload a video last week, so this video will be covering weeks 2 and 3. So kicking off with the lowest entry, the bottom of the table, it's number 6, and it's JR with 2 points. JR's been a bit of a non-factor, really, when it comes to the AEW announcer's desk. He earned 2 points in the opening week and really hasn't moved since then. He hasn't said anything good, he hasn't said anything bad. I can't make fun of him for saying anything bad, and I can't praise him either, other than maybe the fact that we have different views on how he should be calling reho matches. I don't really have anything to say other than he could be trying a little bit harder, but either way it hasn't really bothered me because he's been a non-factor and really hasn't said anything worth noting since week 1, and that's why he's still in his original position of 2 and is drawing up the rear end of the league. At number 5, it's Beth Phoenix on 4 points. Again, she's pretty much in the same boat as JR. In week 1, she picked up those 4 points, and week 2 and 3 really didn't say anything worth noting, didn't write anything down that she had to say. She maybe played up a little bit that an armbar was in an awkward position at one point, but it really wasn't anything really awarding a point for. She's been a little bit of a non-factor. I do, however, prefer Beth to JR just because she keeps quiet for a lot of the time. If she doesn't have something useful to say, she will just shut up, whereas I feel like JR does ramble on occasionally, if not frequently. So I definitely think that Beth deserves to be a little bit higher, and I will keep my eye out trying to see if she can say anything a little bit more useful in the next few weeks. I'm hoping that she'll pick up some more points, because as the only female commentator on this list, I don't want her to be as low down as she is, because I actually really do enjoy some of the stuff that she has to say when it comes to the character and facial expressions, etc, etc. At number 4, it's Toni Shivani, and he has 5 points. He's been earning points steadily throughout the weeks, earning 2 in week 1, the same in week 2, and 1 this week. He really has done a good job with the character and the facial expressions like Beth does over on NXT. He was really useful during the Private Party versus Young Bucks match in terms of really building the fact that Young Bucks wanted Private Party in AEW and how important the match was, and his best call this week was during it was during the tag match between Moxley and Pac versus Page and Omega, when Page hit a big lariat and Tony put over the fact that he hit that lariat perfectly using the bicep to increase the damage done. So I've actually been quite impressed with Tony. I've quite liked a lot of his input. I enjoyed the fact that he called MJF a prick in the first week, and I've really enjoyed some of the things that he has to say, like I say, in terms of the character and the facial expression type stuff. So only on slightly more than Beth, but still doing a little bit of a better job, and it's nice, considering that I'd never heard of Tony before AEW, that I'm actually getting to know him and being impressed already. And I have a feeling that he might be a bit of a sleeper in the league, because he might just pick up points steadily where other people might fall behind or lose some or not move like JR has. I actually feel like Tony might actually climb a little bit higher some weeks, so I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from there. At number 3, it's Mauro Ranallo. He's on 6 points. He's been steadily earning points throughout these weeks, earning on average 2 each week. He actually usually earns more, but tends to lose more as well. So each week I think he's got up to at least 3 or 4, but ends up moving back down to 2 usually. I don't know why he's not gone below that, but he usually earns the 2. And it's been a fairly interesting journey because at times I actually find him probably the most frustrating on the table, but I also really enjoy him, maybe one of the most, other than Nigel when he's on top form. He did a really, really good job during the during the Matt Riddle match on NXT last week. I really enjoy Mauro when Matt Riddle is having a match because of his quick striking offense, MMA based. Mauro gets really, really into it and starts calling really well, so he picked up a point during that. And I also really appreciated that he told us what the Willow's Bell was when Ciampa pulled that out in his return match, so he earned points for that this week. At number 2, it's Nigel Mcguinness on 9 points. What a meteoric rise Nigel's had, with the slow start in week 1, only earning 1 point, and then last week on week 2 picking up 3 points, and finally week 3 picking up 5 points, which I'm glad to see him actually getting up to. Before I started doing this league table, Nigel was quite commonly scoring up to 5 points, but really I had a slow start and I was sort of getting worried about it with the transition over to the TV and Mauro being back to being his live TV self. He's definitely been strangling Nigel a little bit. There's been moments where Nigel's tried to talk and Mauro's shouted over him and they've interrupted each other, and it's just not really gelling as well as Nigel gels with Vic Joseph. He did a really, really great job during Pete Dunne versus Damian Priest on NXT last week, and it picked up some points during the show just because he was on his top form. He picked up at least 1 point during Matt Riddle's match for talking about submissions. I think he picked up one in Ciampa's return match for talking about the placement of a knee, and really was just doing a very, very good job, and has done really, really well to get up to this point in the table. I'm really impressed, and also really happy because he is my personal favourite. Sorry, I am biased. And at the top of the table, in the number 1 slot, is Excalibur, with 11 points. Now, I was really expecting Excalibur to run away with this after week 1, where he picked up 8 points, but in week 2, he only picked up 2 points, and this week in week 3 picked up 1, and he just was really not trying at some points in a lot of points with AEW. I was quite surprised and disappointed these last 2 weeks. It seemed like in week 1, when everything was on the line and it was the debut on TNT, he was on the ball and he was calling everything and not missing anything, and he did a terrific job in the Private Party versus Young Bucks match. Actually picked up 5 points, I think, but then by the time the main event rolled around and we got Dustin and Page versus Jericho and Guevara, he'd lost quite a lot with just vague calls like tandem offense there and stuff like that. And then this week really only picked up the 1 point during the Jurassic Express versus Lucha Brothers match for his call at the beginning, with Marco Stunt holding open Jungle Boy holding open the ropes for Marco Stunt to do a suicide dive in the sequence there. And other than that, did a really, really terrible job. He had some really vague calls during the Darby Allin Jericho match, as well as in the tag match, and etc, and just has done a really disappointing job considering how strong he started. And I'm really, really hoping that Nigel can just earn a few more points next week and knock him off that number 1 spot. I just felt a little bit bitter these last 2 weeks because I know how good he can be from the parts where he's been really good, and it's annoying to not get that top level performance when I know that he can give it out. So yeah, Excalibur at number 1, 11 points, and I really, really would have thought that he'd have been higher than that after earning 8 in week 1. If you've enjoyed this episode, click the like button, let me know, and if you want more detailed breakdowns of the shows, subscribe to the channel and go check out my NXT and AEW reviews. I'm off, guys, and you should have a good one. I'm Mason in the Dark, and a few years ago, my eyesight jobbed harder than Drake Maverick trying to consummate his marriage. I'm Mason in the Dark, and a few years ago my eyesight jobbed harder than Daniel Bryan facing Sheamus at WrestleMania. I'm Mason in the Dark, and a few years ago my eyesight jobbed harder than Kofi Kingston jobbed to Brock Lesnar. Oh no, that's just a sad one. I'm Mason in the Dark, and my eyesight sucks as much as the women's tag division in WWE. I'm Mason in the Dark, and my eyesight sucks more than Alexa Bliss and Bayley doing a This Is Your Life segment. Follow me on Twitter _Mason _ No. Follow me on Twitter at Mason _WITD.